Welcome back to the basement. I'm Steve Lewis. This week, we wrap up our deep dive into the year 1965 with a look at television, more music, and what the Beach Boys were up to in the months of October, November, and December. Starting with television, premiering on Saturday, December 9th on CBS is a new animated holiday special, A Charlie Brown Christmas. It's the first TV special to feature characters from Charles M. Schulz's popular comic strip, Peanuts. Like the comic strips, it's charmingly low-key and gently philosophical. Music by the Vince Guaraldi Trio, a piano-based instrumental jazz group who had a number 22 hit in 1963 with Cast Your Fate to the Wind, gives the special an unexpected touch of class. In part, the special bemoans the crass commerciality of modern Christmas. Lucy instructs Charlie Brown to get the biggest aluminum tree you can find, maybe paint it pink. Of course, with the help of Linus, Charlie Brown and friends find the true meaning of Christmas. Aluminum Christmas trees had been introduced in 1959 with the Evergleam. Sales had been growing for the space-age trees every year since. Reputedly, it's the disdainful treatment that the trees receive in A Charlie Brown Christmas that begins their downfall. Sales will plummet in the late 60s. Evergleam will go out of business in 1969, and by the early 70s, aluminum trees will virtually have disappeared from the market. In contrast, A Charlie Brown Christmas will become a perennial favorite, broadcast every December for decades to come. If you were a kid watching the special that night, you might have been hoping for one of the year's hot new toys. As Dr. Insomnia reminded me back on episode 213, a popular new stocking stuffer this year is the Super Ball from Wham-O with its amazing bounce. For those into espionage, there's Six Finger. Originally developed for use by the CIA. Nah, not really. Six Finger is advertised as the ultimate spy gadget with 6 uses. With an attachment, it becomes a ballpoint pen. Then there are 5 other uses that pretty much all involve shooting it like a dart gun. Of course, a shiny, plastic, totally stiff sixth finger is completely undetectable to the untrained eye. There are also James Bond toys like these 007 James Bond action toy sets and figures, and Bond's Aston Martin from Goldfinger by Corgi. If the budget is a little higher, you might get Ideal's Man from Uncle attaché case with passport, wallet, secret message sender, plastic gun, and a cap-firing grenade. Even more deluxe is Topper's Secret Sam spy case. It comes with a periscope, a handgun that converts into a sniper rifle, and a working spy camera that takes real pictures. You might be hoping for one of the new model kits like the Munsters or the Addams Family Haunted House. There's also a new Monster Hot Rod series that includes Frankenstein's Flivver and Dracula's Dragster, the Wolfman's Wagon and the Mummy's Chariot, and if giant monsters are your thing, King Kong's Thronister and Godzilla's Go-Kart. From Mattel, there's a new Thingmaker set this year, spooky and brightly colored Creeple People. Board games are big this year. There's the still popular Beatles Flip Your Wig game, which debuted in 1964, and new games like James Bond, Man from U.N.C.L.E., Green Ghost with its glow-in-the-dark board, the spooky game you play in the dark, and Mystery Date, a big hit this year, which, according to the box, is for girls ages 6 to 14. It's the game that asks the question, will your date be a dream or a dud? You never knew who might be there when you opened the door for your mystery date. And speaking of dates, premiering on Monday, December 20th on ABC from the dating capital of the world, Hollywood, California, comes The Dating Game, hosted by Jim Lang, in which a lovely bachelorette questions 3 bachelors, seen by the audience but unseen by her, and chooses one of them to go on a date with her and their dating game chaperone to some exotic location like Catalina Island or San Diego. The show will be extremely popular, running on ABC until 1973, and in syndication off and on until 1988. I actually tried out for The Dating Game in 1986. It was completely on a whim just to see what it was like because I happened to live near where they taped it. I got a call back, but I didn't make the cut in the second round, much to the loss, I'm sure, of some mid-'80s bachelorette. And what were the Beach Boys up to in the last 3 months of 1965? In an article in Billboard on October 16th, Capitol announces that they're starting a motion picture division with former Allied Artists president Steve Broidy at the helm. Their first film will be a teen movie in the vein of A Hard Day's Night and Help, starring the Beach Boys, Capitol's hottest American act. On Wednesday, November 3rd, the Beach Boys appear on the Jack Benny Hour, a television special on NBC. Jack's other guests include Bob Hope, Elka Summer, and Walt Disney in a special filmed appearance meant, in part, to publicize Disney's new live-action family comedy, That Darn Cat. The Beach Boys with Brian appear twice, and it's great to see them in color. First, they do live vocals over the original backing track of California Girls, which is followed by a short skit with Jack Benny and Bob Hope as wannabe surfers who Brian refers to as senior citizen dropouts. Pretty much every member of the group gets at least one line. The skit concludes with a brief reprise of California Girls. Later in the show, they return for Barbara Ann from their new album, with Brian on lead vocal and a guitar solo from Carl. I believe it's a new live in the studio recording done for the show and then mimed to in front of the cameras. Please let me know if I'm wrong about that. The Beach Boys' appearance had been taped on October 23rd. It's interesting that the group are using the appearance to promote an album track, Barbara Ann, rather than their forthcoming single, The Little Girl I Once Knew. A day earlier, on October 22nd, the Beach Boys had taped an appearance for the Andy Williams Show, doing live vocals over newly recorded backing tracks for Help Me Rhonda, Their Hearts Were Full of Spring, and Little Honda. Little Honda is performed with Andy Williams, and the lyrics have been changed to Little Cycle to avoid giving Honda free advertising. The performance is scheduled to air on February 14, 1966, nearly 4 months later. For some reason, the appearance won't air until May 2nd, 1966, more than 6 months later. I'm not sure why in November 1965 they chose to perform Help Me Rhonda, which was nearly 8 months old, and Little Honda, which is nearly a year and a half old. By the time of the broadcast, of course, they're 6 months older still. By the time of the broadcast on May 2nd, 1966, with Sloop John B at number 4 in the charts, and 2 weeks ahead of the release of Pet Sounds, these must have looked to Beach Boys fans like very odd choices. On November 8th, the Beach Boys Party album is released ahead of the holiday sales season. We'll do a deep dive look at this to kick off 1966 in a future episode. On November 14th, the Beach Boys begin another U.S. tour, playing the USO A Go-Go benefit concert at Madison Square Garden on an unusual bill of mostly mainstream celebrities and TV and film stars, including, among others, Carol Baker, Red Buttons, Johnny Carson, Joan Crawford, Robert Culp, Sammy Davis Jr., Henry Fonda, Peter Falk, Edie Gourmet, Alan King, Frankie Lane, Steve Lawrence, Joe E. Lewis, Sherry Lewis, Anthony Newley, Robert Vaughn, and Bobby Vinton. Apart from the Beach Boys, about the only other act for the young people in the audience on the bill is the Supremes. According to an article in Tiger Beat magazine in 1966, Carl Wilson proposes to his girlfriend of 2 months, Annie Hinchy, Billy's sister, over the phone after the show. On November 22nd, there's a new Beach Boys single, The Little Girl I Once Knew, backed with There's No Other Like My Baby from the new Party album. On December 4th, Billboard reports that the Beach Boys and the new head of Capitol's new motion picture division, Steve Broidy, have been unable to come to terms on a film for the group, and the movie project has been shelved. The central problem, reportedly, is finding a script suitable to all parties. In fact, they report, things got so hot that the group were battling among themselves over the problem. Now that the deal has fallen through, Billboard says, leader Brian Wilson is reportedly being offered other motion picture opportunities. And in international news reported in Billboard on December 18th, the Beach Boys' new single in Holland is The Little Girls I Once Knew, in one of my all-time favorite typos. On December 20th, Barbara Ann from the Beach Boys' Party album is released as a single. The release comes less than a month after The Little Girl I Once Knew, and while that single is still at number 26 and still climbing the charts. 2 weeks later, on January 8th, 1966, The Little Girl I Once Knew will peak at a disappointing number 20. Common lore will be that the single's relative failure is due to its unusual structure and the abrupt pauses that create dead air for disc jockeys. As discussed back in episode 77, I suspect a more prosaic explanation is that Capitol saw a surefire hit with Barbara Ann and rushed it out to promote the Party album ahead of the holidays, undercutting The Little Girl I Once Knew before it had a chance to complete its chart run. Now let's begin wrapping things up with a look at the final album chart of the year, December 25th, 1966. At number 1 is Whipped Cream and Other Delights by Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. It had first been in the top 10 at the beginning of the third quarter and is in the first of 2 runs at number 1. We discussed it in detail earlier. The Sound of Music soundtrack is at number 2. It's another long-running hit discussed earlier and still relatively early in its run. Welcome to the LBJ Ranch is at its number 3 peak. It's a comedy album that takes recordings of politicians' real answers and changes the question, making it sort of a cross between a Vaughn Meader First Family album and a Dickie Goodman drop-in record. At number 4 is Going Places, another big hit for Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. It'll hit number 1 on March 5th, 1966, and return to number 1 for 5 more weeks beginning April 6th, 1966. The Best of Herman's Hermits is at its number 5 peak. At number 6 is My Name is Barbara 2 by Barbra Streisand. Like the original volume, it also peaked at number 2 for 3 weeks beginning back on November 27th. Beach Boys' Party is at number 7. It'll peak at number 6 next week, January 1st, 1966. At number 8 is December's Children and Everybody's by the Rolling Stones. It'll hit number 4 for 3 weeks, beginning January 8th. The In Crowd by the Ramsey Lewis Trio is still in the top 10 from the beginning of the quarter. It's currently at number 9. And at number 10 is Harem Scarum by Elvis Presley. It'll spend 2 weeks at number 8, beginning January 1st. Turning to hit singles at year-end, at number 1 is Over and Over by the Dave Clark Five. With all their popularity and high-charting records, this will be the Dave Clark Five's only U.S. number 1. At number 2 is Turn, Turn, Turn by the Byrds. Pete Seeger's folk tune with words from the biblical book of Ecclesiastes had been turned into a shimmering modern rock masterpiece by the Byrds and producer Terry Melcher. It had been number 1 for the first 3 weeks of December. During its run at number 1, the Byrds performed the song along with Mr. Tambourine Man on the December 12th episode of The Ed Sullivan Show. Now in color, McGuinn's trademark rectangle shades really stand out in blue for those with color sets. According to Chris Hillman, David Crosby had gotten into a huge and highly unprofessional argument about the sound with the show's producer just before airtime, which may account for it being the Byrds' only appearance on the show. Will Crosby learn a valuable lesson from this and transform himself into one of the most congenial men in the music business? I think you know the answer. If not, stay tuned. Turn, Turn, Turn is the Byrds' second number 1. As it turns out, it'll be their last time in the top 10. At number 3 is I Got You, I Feel Good by James Brown. Some copies of the single noted it was from his movie Ski Party, which we discussed in an earlier episode. It's in the first of 3 weeks at number 3. Let's Hang On by the Four Seasons is at number 4. It had hit number 3 on December 11th. At number 5 is The Sounds of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel. They'd already been around on the music scene for years, achieving moderate success with Everly Brothers-style teen pop, and then with folk. The song originally appeared on their 1964 debut for Columbia Records, Wednesday Morning 3 a.m. Their producer, Tom Wilson, had the track overdubbed by a rock band and released as a single without Simon and Garfunkel's knowledge. Wilson was well acquainted with the emerging folk rock sound, since he was also a longtime producer for their Columbia stablemate, Bob Dylan. Wilson was clearly onto something. The overdubbed version is Simon and Garfunkel's first hit and will go all the way to #1 next week, January 1st, 1966. Make the World Go Away by Eddie Arnold is at its #6 peak. The song had first been a hit for Timmy Euro, going to #24 back in 1963. Eddie Arnold had been a massive country star since 1945, racking up an astounding number of country hits. This will easily be the biggest crossover hit of his career. Fever is the McCoys' follow-up to their #1 fall hit, Hang On Sloopy. Little Willie John took Fever to #24 in 1956. Peggy Lee took it to #8 in 1958. Now the McCoys are having the biggest hit of all with Fever, which is in the first of 2 weeks at #7. England Swings by Roger Miller is in the second of 2 weeks at #8. Ebb Tide by the Righteous Brothers is at #9. Lenny Welch had taken it to #25 a year and a half earlier. The Righteous Brothers version will spend 2 weeks at #5 beginning January 8th. And rounding out the top 10 is I Can Never Go Home Anymore by the Shangri-Las. It had spent 2 weeks at #6 beginning December 11th. On December 31st, the Beach Boys play a New Year's Eve show in Tacoma, Washington, with support from Gary Lewis and the Playboys, the Beau Brummels, and the Yardbirds, among others. According to Bruce Johnston, the Yardbirds had blown their amps, so the Beach Boys let them use theirs. When guitarist Jeff Beck starts deliberately using feedback from the amps, Dennis and Mike, who are fairly unfamiliar with guitar equipment, think that Beck is destroying their stuff and try to pull the plug. Bruce explains to them what's going on. Late in the Beach Boys set, the audience swarms the stage and the Beach Boys are forced to flee, an experience Bruce will later describe as frightening. Meanwhile, that night on television, you can catch year-end festivities on the syndicated New Year's Eve party with Guy Lombardo from the Roosevelt Grill. Over on NBC, The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson features Johnny's guests comedian Woody Allen, opera singer William Walker, actress Gila Golan, entertainer and psychic Criswell, and the Muppets. Just before midnight, The Tonight Show cuts to Ben Grauer in Times Square, a segment broadcast in black and white, for the annual ball drop to ring in 1966. And with that, we leave 1965. An incredibly eventful year all around, with groundbreaking changes in popular music and some of the Beach Boys' greatest records. I hope you enjoyed this look at the year. We'll move on to other topics and other times next time, eventually resuming with a deep dive look at the Beach Boys' Party album and all the events of 1966. Meanwhile, I look forward to your feedback. As always, please hit like if you don't mind, subscribe if you haven't. Thanks for watching. Have a great week. Bye.